Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Silvavine podcast with your host, Michelle De Silva, a podcast that focuses on creating healing and awareness. In today's episode, Michelle is joined by Marie McKenzie. Marie is a sexual assault recovery coach, CEO, and founder of the International Sexual Assault Recovery Institute, renowned for her award-winning and best-selling memoir, Things That Keep Me Up at Night. Marie helps guide women in conquering their sexual assault triggers and rekindling intimacy within their relationships after experiencing sexual assault. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Silvavine podcast with me as your host, Michelle De Silva. I am honored to be joined today by Marie McKenzie. Through Marie's own journey of sexual assault, Marie has devoted her life to empowering women to overcome their own sexual assault triggers and find intimacy with their spouses. Since this, she's the CEO and founder of the International Sexual Assault Recovery Institute. She's also renowned for her award-winning and best-selling memoir, Things That Keep Me Up at Night. Thank you so much for joining me today, Marie.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. Thank you.
I mean, I know we've finally gotten together, right?
Yes. It's been a long time coming.
It has, with different time zones and everything, and we've finally got together. Obviously, sexual abuse is a very traumatic and intimate experience, so I wanted to thank you for coming on today and being so open to share your story. Obviously, as I just mentioned, it's traumatic and an intimate experience. But Marie, what has finally gotten you to the point now where you're able to speak about this?
Through the years, suffering through different mental health issues, caring for survivors in the emergency room and in the community settings, I was always encouraging them to seek support, follow up with the counselors, speak about their experiences, following up with law enforcement. But I wasn't thinking that I advised for myself. I was shut in. I hadn't shared my story. When I say shut in, that's secretly hurting due to unresolved trauma, internalizing, reliving the trauma, getting anxious, angry, needlessly. So that was me. And then I felt like a fraud because here I was putting on a front like everything was okay when it wasn't. So I started intentionally caring for myself so I could get past what was holding me back. I looked like everything was fine, but inside it wasn't. So through association with people and organizations who support sexual assault survivors and work towards ending this horrible crime, I gather tools and techniques that I've used to heal myself. And now I want to share that with others to help them heal, survive, and thrive.
So your experience that you've had, was this earlier on in your life or was this later on in your life?
I was age 11 for the first time, and then I've had other incidents throughout my teenage years. Yeah, but at 11, and it was at my home, was a husband of one of my aunts, and I just never told anyone. I kept it.
I hear that a lot. A lot. That's quite common, isn't it?
That's quite common, especially children, survivors of sexual assault. They are muted. They may be threatened. They may be told, oh, don't let anyone touch you here. Children must be seen and not heard. So when you're told that kind of thing, when these things happen to you, you feel like it's your fault. It's not necessarily that there's a fractured relationship with the caregivers. It's just that you just blame yourself. You feel guilty. You didn't prevent this thing. Or how will they see me? Or if the perpetrator is someone who's trusted and loved by others, you may think you'd not be believed, or you don't want to bring shame on the family. So you just remain muted and grow up with that shame, guilt, and self-blame.
Mm-hmm. And that is quite sad. I mean, I was speaking to somebody the other day, and I done a different recording with regards to domestic violence, and it is quite similar in the feelings that you were describing, as in a lot of people who go through experiences where they were in some form taken advantage of. It's almost common and natural for the individual to blame themselves for something that they have got nothing to be shamed
Nothing to do
on,
with.
nothing to feel guilty about. However, as a victim, it's often quite similar feelings that individuals carry around with them.
Yes. Um, Guilt, shame, self-blame. And then if you go around with that silence long enough, you start to believe it. You start to believe, oh, I'm not worthy. No one is going to believe me. I'm not good for anything. And this manifests in different ways for different people. We adopt abnormal coping skills, drugs, alcohol, promiscuity, or retreat from intimacy. We don't even trust our own instincts, because of the lack of trust, because we were violated that trust we had with that caregiver, because adults are supposed to be protecting the children, whether they're your child or not. You are the authority figure. You are supposed to. I remember when I grew up in Jamaica, and it was like the village. It takes a village, and I had a village, and thank God, a lot of the good things in my life when I was growing up, it's because of the village. And I wrote about that in my memoir. People who helped. My mother was single, so we had the extended family members, we had the community members who helped to give us basic needs, to ensure that we survived. I remember in particular when our house burnt down, how the community rallied around us and provided us with basic things.
The irony of what you've just shared over there is that, this village is so pure and so natural, but then there's also an element where in situations like that could be vulnerable grounds for things to be so natural and things for not to be spoken about because of the intimacy of that relationship and that situation.
Absolutely, because my perpetrator, everybody knew. This was an open secret. At the time, I had no knowledge. At the age of 11, I had no knowledge. But what I learned later, it was open secret that nobody spoke about in public. The community knew, the family knew. He was making his way through the young girls in the family and the community, and nobody was talking about it. And to this day, I don't think, or at least to my knowledge, he has ever been held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the village swept it under the rug.
Yeah, exactly that. You mentioned earlier, Marie, that later you had this encounter, then later on you went to experience further encounters. Is that right?
Yes, we're in school, and we've had public transport when I grew up. So in public transport, older men fondling, all those, and those are things that are sexual abuse. And I had an attempted rape in high school in broad daylight in front of other students who just laughed. Fortunately, I was able to escape from the perpetrator. But yes, it
And I
was
think,
just like, no, the way the system set us up to think of sexual abuse is as if it's nothing.
yeah, exactly. And it's quite similar, I suppose, with regards to the whole thing with women, and not just saying that it's only women that get, sexually
Right.
abused. Men do that, men also go through such experiences. But going back to how it was just acceptable, and in your instance, people were laughing and stuff like that, I suppose it takes it back to people thinking that, a woman walking down the street, and if she wears certain type of clothing, you have ignorant people who
Yes.
make comments like, she deserved it. Look what she was
Yes.
wearing.
Right. Not that the perpetrator there is no excuse for sexual assault. It doesn't matter. If I want to wear a short skirt, that's my prerogative. I have the right to dress the way I want. And I've had victims that I said, even if you agreed to do drugs with this person or have alcohol beverages and you become impaired, you did not agree to be raped. And if you're impaired, that's not consent. If I didn't enthusiastically agree, step A, B, C, D, then you didn't get consent. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I wear is no excuse for sexual assault.
No.
But I'm tired of the victim blaming instead of shining the light on the perpetrator.
And that's just it. It's taking responsibility and allowing, individuals to be comfortable in their own skin. And if they want to dress in a certain way, it's their prerogative to do so. And it just comes down to this view or this acceptability. I mean, we've evolved so much more with women, being able to speak out. But, there was a time where a woman wasn't able to speak out, and she had to do exactly what a man asked of her. And if you look back at the time of the wars, when men went abroad and they fought in the war, they just picked up women throughout the war and slept with women and did whatever they want.
Yes.
So we do have ourselves to blame, really, with this type of behavior, because it is and has come from us. But I think also the important thing that we need to be discussing here with regards to this element of this experience of sexual abuse is that it is so traumatic for individuals who go through this, and they are not to blame in this.
I'm sorry, say that again.
That they are not to blame in this situation.
The victim.
Yes.
Yeah, the victim is not to be blamed. And as you said, we do have a responsibility as women to speak up. But remember, a lot of us we grew up being silenced. The men spoke. If you go back even to the Bible, women were like oppressed. They were like child bearers and homemakers and husband pleasers. And that has continued generation to generation. I'm happy to see where women are speaking up more now, but there are parts of society where that just doesn't exist. Women are still being trampled on. So, I'm glad voices are being raised. If you go back to the Me Too movement a few years ago, and so many thousands of women stood up to say Me Too. But on the other hand, there were thousands that still remained silent.
Mm-hmm.
We want to hear more voices, but because we have been conditioned, some people remain muted for different reasons too.
And so what is your take on how do we get this forward? How do we get more women to stand on their own 2 feet, to speak up? Because I know, like, when you go through something like this, through my own experience that I have experienced with regards to this issue, you don't want to speak up. You do feel like you don't want to say anything. And it all goes back to that shame and that embarrassment of that very thing happening to you. But in fact, it's like you're the innocent party in this whole
You are the
thing.
innocent party.
The
So,
complete.
and what we do is we continue conversations like this, because there are women out there today who believe I'm alone. So when we continue conversations like this and they hear it, they're like, oh my God, it's not just me. I remember when I went public, I was almost 60 years old. And through the shock, people were reaching out to me, sharing their stories, because if Marie can share it, I can share it. So we just got to keep this conversation going 24/7, 365. So all the women who are silent, believing that this shame, guilt, and self-blame is on me, we have to keep speaking up to reassure them you are not alone and it's not your fault.
Mm-hmm. And kind of shifted from those initial blockage that you do feel, because it does almost feel, anybody who's gone through something like this, it does almost feel like you've got this invisible hand that keeps, over your throat,
Suffocating.
where you want to speak up but you can't. It's almost like you're silenced invisibly where you want to, but you just feel like you just can't get it out.
Yes. And it doesn't matter if you're educated or not educated, what part of society you're from. Trauma does something, this kind of trauma does something to you. The one part of you that you should have control of, somebody ripped that away. Your body. That's yours. You should be able to say no or, get away from me. But when that control is ripped away from you, it shifts your mindset. The way you see people and the world completely change. So most of us remain muted, living with that guilt, shame, and self-blame. And these three powerful emotions thrives on silence. Thrives in silence.
Yeah, definitely. What got you to the point? Because you said you came out of it when you're later on in life. Had you wished you had come out earlier?
I wished I had come out earlier. Most importantly, it would have saved other victims, including my younger sister, from the same perpetrator.
Wow. That's really, really,
perpetrator. Yes.
that is so, what you've just said there, Marie, and sorry to cut you off, is so sad and powerful in the same sentence. Because you hadn't come out, that incident has happened, but then also powerful in the sense of, if you speak about this, that it actually is not about you. Yes, it's about you. One element of it is about you, but it's also, you don't realize the impact of how you could be helping other people.
Yes. At the time, I didn't think about it. And I didn't make a decision, oh, I'm not going to tell. I just didn't tell. As a child, you hear children must be seen and not heard. So when I was sexually assaulted, I kept it to myself. I was seen but not heard. And, later on, after I reveal what had happened and family members explained shocked and learned of other instances with family members who, not by the same perpetrator, family and friends share their stories. And one of my, someone in the family said, oh, I'm sorry you didn't share back then so you could receive the support. And I'm like, but you didn't support the children that you knew about. Why would I be different? And I felt now, after I disclosed and everything came out, I felt like if I had disclosed as a child, it would have made a difference. I believed it would have made a difference if I had disclosed.
But obviously that's something that, you're not to blame on, yet again.
Right.
That's just your own journey, your own path.
Yeah. Now I know better.
Well, hindsight is always a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yes.
But I think the wonderful thing and the message is now that you've just conveyed there is that you have got the opportunity and you have gotten to the point now where you are working with women and you are sharing your story, and so you are able to not only help people who've gone through, but also maybe possibly prevent maybe situations from happening.
Yes.
And I mean it in the sense of where people might be able to look after signs or advances that if maybe we didn't have conversations about it, that they wouldn't be able to pick that up.
Right. Now they are more aware that I have one woman who said to me, she had been sexually assaulted so much in her life, she thought it was normal. She kept telling herself it's just a misunderstanding between myself and these people. She was in college when she relayed to one of her classmates something that had happened to her with one of her dates. And their friend said, you were raped. And that's when it was like a light bulb moment. oh my God, I was raped. And so there she was, traumatized, because now she's realizing all these things. She's forgiving these people for taking advantage of her because they misunderstood her actions. Oh no, I was raped multiple times.
And that's quite sad because it was acceptable behavior to her. She didn't know
And
any different.
She grew up with that kind of behavior, so she thought it was normal.
That is so. At what point, having worked with all these women with your own experience, for women to understand, or not only women, men too, at what point do people draw the line where it's not okay for people to overstep a boundary, overstep somebody else's boundary, where it could be deemed as sexual abuse?
Well, it's different for everyone because what I may accept, you may not. I mean, an unwanted touch on the butt is sexual assault, but I may not want it, but it may be acceptable to someone else. So we all have our own boundaries, but it's everything that crosses the line where you are concerned. Whatever you're not comfortable with, you should not accept. So and a lot of us are uncomfortable with setting boundaries. So we tolerate things that we are not comfortable with because we don't want to upset others or make them feel bad. So we need to get comfortable with, you're crossing the line here. I'm not comfortable with you touching me there, or, this is not me. So we each have our own boundaries.
Yeah. Do you know, it's funny because it's just something that's popped into my head now. When I spoke to you earlier, I mentioned about, the clothing thing, and I've got a daughter, and it's funny how we condition to view things a certain way with regards to men and women and stuff. And she'll go out and sometimes wear something, and immediately I will think, oh, that's too revealing, or it's too this, because she might get unwanted advances and leave her in a vulnerable position. And I think that's so sad that I even have to, or I have thought like that because of the experiences and the way that certain individuals think that it's okay to take advantage of somebody else without their permission.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. And I also tell women, we need to make good judgment also. Like, we're going out on a date and we're over consuming alcohol. We get inebriated and we're taking advantage. Some men will take advantage of you. So, like, if I'm going out with work friends, anywhere I'm going and my husband is not there, I will not have more than one glass of wine, or just in case anything happens. Because although these are people that I know and I don't expect anyone to take advantage of me, I'm not taking the chance. I dress a certain way just because for me, I'm practicing good judgment because I know what's out there. So I always encourage women, children, girls, boys, practice good judgment. Mothers, teach your son, rape is not okay. Sexual assault is not okay. If the girl or woman doesn't say no, she didn't say yes either. Lack of no is not consent. The absence of no does not mean consent. And consent is an enthusiastic conversation. She may want to be kissed in the car and nothing further when she gets out of the car. So unless she gives you consent to keep going, then you don't have consent.
I know that. Yeah, sorry, go on.
And that is something that people don't think about. They think it's yes, no, and if the woman doesn't say no, then she's okay with what's coming. Yeah.
See, I always think, like, when you're at school and they teach when they I mean, over here in the UK, when you finish primary school and before you go into secondary school, they kind of do like a
Sex ed.
yeah, like a little video thing they show them and stuff like that, and they speak about it, briefly also when they go into secondary school. But I always believe that there is an element where, and again, this is not being sexist to men and women, but if we look at it, largely sexual offences is done by men. And
Yes.
I do feel that there is an element that needs to be taught, as in this self-control, because I think men don't practice enough self-control. They have this where, it's like, once I've gotten to this stage, I've started up my car, I want to drive my car now.
Yes.
There is a lot of that. And I think it needs to be emphasized a little bit more that, yes, you might have started your car, but these are the actions that you need to take, to go and
Yes.
cool your car down or unstart your car,
Yes.
because in the world there is a lot of like pleasure, so human beings love to have pleasure, and we use a lot of that in terms of sex, and
Yes.
there needs to be some sort of element where it's programmed already from a really, really young age. Like, listen, boys, just because your car started up, learn a bit of self-control. This is the steps you've got. This is how you need to pull away, instead of like this concept of like, I've heated up now, I want to get what I want. I've tried to put that in a really, really nice way without going too explicit there, Marie.
Yes. And we're not teaching our children, when they're young, that's when their brains are developing, and the parents and caregivers are the ones who are supposed to be teaching them these things. Self-control. How do you manage your emotions? Appropriate coping skills. And when you have a child going through sexual abuse or any form of childhood trauma, especially where the caregivers are concerned, they don't get to develop these appropriate coping skills. They don't learn to manage their emotions. They don't know how to, the car is going, but I have to stop and cool down. They were never taught that. And they're not going to learn that on their own. It's not just going to jump out of the breeze on them. So we have to get back to, how do we condition our children so that we empower them, not just to report if they're abused, but to not be an abuser, to not be a perpetrator, to always practice good judgment, whether you're a boy or a girl. Not to see women as toys. We are not playthings. We are not there for your pleasure. Yeah, and rape, I don't even think it's pleasure. Rape is about power and control, Yes.
Yeah.
So we're not things to be toyed with.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's interesting that you say it, because ultimately what it comes down to is about power and control, to exert over to somebody else, because they could be they could release in a different way. They don't necessarily have to release in
Exactly. If it's all about pleasure, there are ways you can, yes. And it's not that, because think of spouses who go out and rape. So they have a willing partner at home or wherever, but yet they'll go out and rape. So it's not about, not having someone to have sex with or pleasure.
Yeah, that's so
Power
interesting.
and control.
Yes, that's so interesting that you've just said it like that. It's almost like, and if they have certain, like if they had a lot of rejection, or people were rejecting them, or they didn't feel that they were receiving what they needed to receive in a different way, then I can see how it's not about the actual act itself. And that's really, really quite sad, by you putting it like that, because I've never really thought about it like that, but once you've said that, that makes perfect sense.
Yes.
And that's really, really sad to the victim, because to them, the scarring that's left to them is massive, absolutely massive, when the perpetrator could be having their needs met
Yes.
in a totally different way without causing so much
Yes.
hurt to somebody else.
And they don't care that they're causing harm to someone else, a harm that's going to be lifelong. It's not that you're going to be raped, you go take a shower and, oh, I'm fine. You're a crime scene. Rape is the only crime where you walk around with the crime scene and you're traumatized, some victims for life. Because even if you receive therapy or coaching and you adopt good coping skills, managing your triggers, these triggers can just jump at you out of the blue with could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later without you're not even thinking of it. And then you're triggered by a sight, a sound, a smell, anything.
Do you know
Lifelong.
what? Yeah. I mean, it's just things like this, Marie, just like you expressing yourself in that way, and what you've just said in that last minute is just so right in every way. And what I would love to see is like have people like you. I have a vision in my head now. Have people like you, visiting groups of men, young boys or young men in a workplace, where instead of having this nonsense about sales talk and work talk, have somebody like you go in. And again, I'm just generalizing. I know it's not just men. I know it's, it's women too. But, have somebody like you go in and break it down in black and white with the effects. And actually, maybe it's not just about that. It's your other needs that you're not able to figure out in your life. You might need to sort out your own trauma in your own life that's it's causing you to act in this way. That's so powerful. I'd love to have that. I'd love to have more people who have gone through such a painful experience go out there and speak to groups of men and go and educate them around this. And this is this is the consequences of your actions. This is what it leads. This is not what the real reason is why you might be even thinking of doing that. And just offer that education, because the more education and the more knowledge that we have, then we can move forward to possibly making the changes we need.
Right. And they could be a part of the change.
Yeah.
Yes. We need more men involved in sexual assault awareness and prevention.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%. I see it now, Maria. I see it now. I just see it all now coming together in my head.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
But just right earlier on when we started speaking, you mentioned about when you were working with people, and you felt within yourself that there was still a lot of stuff that were coming up for you and you weren't addressing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I had a period where I was suicidal. I had suicidal ideations, depressed. I'd be off from work. As a nurse, I did 3 shifts. And I'd be off from work and I'd be home from bed to kitchen, sometimes not even taking a shower. I don't know if I've ever said that in public before. So because I lost all sense of myself. Looked good on the outside, but I wasn't taking care of me. Now I'm intentional in, doing things that give me pleasure, self-care, tools and techniques to manage triggers if and when they arise, and the tools that I'm sharing with others to help them do the same. But I went through a dark period, and developing trusting myself, accepting intimacy, aligning myself in relationships that I knew were toxic, were not good for me, but I was just settling for whatever, although I knew better, but because I didn't see myself of being worthy of more, I accepted that. So, and that's what trauma does to survivors. You see yourself on the world at a different level until you've received the help to process it and work through, getting to love yourself again, take yourself again, see yourself in a different way, self-acceptance, self-love.
So is that like quite similar with what you do currently, working with survivors who have gone through sexual abuse?
Yes, it's like currently some of the tools that facilitated my own healing, I share with them and help them to do the same.
So tell me about this memoirs that you've written, Marie.
Okay, so my memoir, it's my first book that I wrote, Things That Keep Me Up at Night. So shortly, when I spoke on a podcast in 2021, early 2021. I was invited to speak on a podcast regarding my role as a sexual assault nurse examiner. So during the podcast was when I disclosed that I was a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. I'd never gone public before. About a month later, I was navigating my Facebook page and a message popped up about a 30-day writing challenge. And I responded and resulted in my memoir, Things That Keep Me Up at Night. There I shared about my journey from childhood sexual abuse, how I overcame. I spoke about my village, the people who helped my mother and, during the time when we were growing up, and some of the good, solid support I've had in my life. And yes, it's a #1 award-winning bestseller. It was released in June of 2021.
Wow, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Marie, if there are any listeners out there who have tuned in, have come across this episode because they're wanting to hear what a fellow survivor and their experience, because they've gone through something similar, they haven't come out yet, what message could you share with them today?
I want them to know you're not alone. You are not your trauma. Healing is possible and help is available. As a survivor of childhood sexual assault, I know what it is to lack trust, not being able to trust even your own self, much more somebody else. I know what it is to not love myself or even be open to receiving love from the right person. I know what it is to attract toxicity, even though I knew it was not good for me, but I settled. I know what it is to not be open to intimacy with myself or with a partner. Help is available. You are not alone. Go to sarecovery.com and get my free gift, my free guide to help you on your way to start healing. sarecovery.com. Thank you.
Thank
Michelle.
you. Thank you for that, Marie. Where else could people find you if they wanted to get in touch with you, Marie?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook as Marie McKenzie. I'm also on TikTok, LinkedIn, SA Recovery Coach. And I have a YouTube channel, SA Recovery. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Look, Marie, you have left me with a vision after this conversation, so watch this space. But I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and being so open and being so brave and courageous to finally be able to tell, your story, which is not something that was easy to go through, but, having more people speak about this to hopefully move it to the point and make the change that we need to make as individuals and put a stop and go that this is not okay. So I just really, really appreciate you and thank you for coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Together we can end this madness.
I think so. So. Thank you, Marie.
The conversation. Thank you, Michelle. Have a great night.
You too.